things to add to the end.
Absolutely. So yeah, to kind of recap again, my name is Levi Zitting. I'm a Springfield Devs board member, filling in for Mike Bates, who's the president, couldn't be here to this kind of thing. So one of the main things that he wanted to make sure I told everyone about tonight is that he is the head of the website committee, and they are very close to migrating the website over to .NET Core, which the reason that's such a big deal is that it allows people to, without having to have access to a Windows machine, which has been a big limitation for a while. So just note that if you are interested in contributing to the Springfield Devs website and some of its features, pretty soon there's going to be a much better story for you, and Mike Bates will be kind of putting some messages out in our Discord about how to get involved with that kind of stuff once it's ready. The other kind of community announcement that I wanted to talk about is me and Fred Lawler. We run another group called OpenSGF, where we work on software projects for nonprofits. If you're interested in coming and helping us and volunteering your time and your skills, we meet here at the eFactory every Tuesday at 6 p.m. And you can find out about our events and stuff on Meetup. I think that's the only thing from our end. Tiffany, you had some stuff to go over.
Yeah, so hey everyone, Tiffany Ford, head of your events committee. Just a couple of things about some upcoming events. So July's event is going to be a bit special in that we're not going to be meeting at the eFactory. That meeting is going to be over at OTC, since per request, we're going to get to check out and have a little fun at OTC's new esports facility. But our speaker is going to be talking about video game development, so it will be educational as usual. We'll have some info in the meetup if you're not familiar with campus, just won't be at eFactory. If you are interested in helping out with the events committee, we'll have a meeting in July. Anyone is one of those. It's not just like board members. So anyone who's interested in helping out with how we run events, talking about speakers or how things work and all of that, there's a channel in the Discord. You're welcome to hop in there and come to any of our meetings. And we are currently looking for a speaker for October and November to close out our 22 year. And then, Levi, did you want to say anything about okay stuff that Mike had talked about?
Totally. Yep. Forgot about that one. So in Tulsa, Oklahoma, this Friday, there is a all-day conference put on by the Tulsa tech community called 200 OK. I believe tickets are still sale. There's a few people from Springfield who are making the trip up. Me and the company that I work at, we have a crew of people going down. So definitely check out their website. I think it's 200ok.us if you're interested in looking at the speaker lineup and information on how to register conference and stuff like that. So is that it, Tiffany?
I think so. I think we're ready to get started.
One last thing that we forgot to mention at the beginning, for those of you who are in person, there's pizza over on the table. Make sure to grab a slice or two and snack. Yes, we totally forgot to mention that earlier. Anyways, I will hand it off to Kirsten.
Well, thank you. Yes. All right. So hi, my Kirsten Markley. I guess I got to get in the video. Could you lower that for me, please, the video? I'm pretty sure I'm out of script. It's a joke because I'm so short. Just forget about it. Hi, I am here because Tiffany Ford is out of town. Oh, look, Frankie, good to see you. Tiffany is out of town, so she asked me to step in and introduce our day, our evening, our panelists, and our topic for tonight. If you notice, there is a QR code up on the screen, so for you guys here, if during the presentations you got questions, please scan this QR code and submit your questions via Slido. And so we're just going to have all of our questions so people on as well as here can submit their questions. And then when it's time to ask questions to our panelists, I'll just pull them out from the Slido. So please send questions via that format. So we'll leave this up for a minute or two for you to get that scanned in and ready. And then we'll go ahead and get started. Nobody's jumping up. I'm not feeling waves of people. All right. All right, so if you'll switch that over, we have one of our panelists that is at home. There he is. All right, so what we're going to do, if you panelists would, please, is first of all, just give us a quick introduction. My name is, I work for, and then what we'll do is after you've done that, we'll ask each of you individually to give us a little bit of information about how you got here. Where did you get into this field? Your background, your education, maybe who you work for, what you're currently doing. Just tell us about you, and so we get a little bit of an idea of where you're coming from and where you are. So that being said, you want to start here, Mark?
Kaffenberger. I'm a senior software engineer for Netsmart Technologies here in town. They're based out of Kansas City, but have an office here in town. As far as education, I went to OTC, got my associates there. Originally wanted to do computer, found out that writing software was a little more fun. And that's about it. So
Temporarily, that's about it.
correct.
All right, fair enough.
Okay. My name's Nylah Rogers. I currently work at Jack Henry Associates as a programmer analyst for their IBM Core Silver Lake software. So, and see here, currently actually going back to school in computer science because I didn't do that first time around, just went straight into the field. So, into that later.
Thank you. Yep.
My name's Anthony Maughan. I work for a company called Forvis, but they're just changing names, so BKD, CPA, and advisors. And until today, I'm going back in more technical role, but I was an IT director of custom solutions, so I managed a group of developers writing software for BKD.
Nice, thank you. And at home?
Hey, everybody. I am a senior front-end engineer at Reach Platform, which builds and maintains the Reach language, and my role is to help build out front-end examples of the language in use.
Great, thank you. All right, you've met our panelists. Now we would like to learn more about each of you. Anybody want to volunteer to go first, or do I pick names? I feel like I'm in class. I teach at OTC, so I feel like I'm back in. Who wants to go first? Thank you. Oh, Anthony, are you gonna? Okay, go ahead. She appreciates the rescue, so go ahead.
So I started in technology as an intern more than 20 years ago. A long journey. I've been a sysadmin and a net admin and an architect and software developer and scripter and just all-around IT guy for small shops, and then moved into some larger enterprises and did software as a service and some startup companies. When I started, so 20 years ago, the educational field was way lacking options, and so I did a lot of my training through camps and vendor-provided certifications and things like that so that I could get into the industry and keep progressing. But I'm a big believer in lifetime learning, and so I love one of the questions, and we'll get to it, but I've always looking for the next challenge or the next new tech to try out and play with. And so and most recently I actually am an instructor at OTC and did a systems and design class, and it was a lot of fun. And I really learned how much I missed going to school. Some of the things that are there now that I know they weren't there when I was to school for computer science, and it was pretty bad. So
I guess that makes me go next. I actually grew up in a family that they were all very literate. I had two older brothers. One was a graphic designer, the other Java programmer. And so I grew up with the entire Adobe Creative Suite through high school. So I had access to a lot of software that I could just play with. And actually started working on website development in high school, working on my church website, as well as eventually moving on to, once I graduated high school, worked on website for Palin Music Center here in town. and then website programming, mainly just because it was immediately, I love the styles as well as the programming where I can just merge them together. I felt like I was a mix between my two brothers. And then I went on to work for Classy Llama here in Springfield as a front-end developer for a little bit. And then about 4 years ago, I moved over to Jack Henry, where I'm at now. I started going to school after high school, but while working at Classy Llama, I decided to drop out, pursue other things in life at the moment. Class schedules were hectic at the time, and then during the pandemic, I thought, well, I got some extra time on my hands. Let's go back to school. I actually went back for a sequel class just to help my career at Jack Henry. Then I was like, oh, hey, I'm actually like several credits in. Let's go ahead and continue. So I'll actually be graduating this fall with my bachelor's, and then plan actually is going to Colorado State because it's all online. So yeah, and that's where my education is and job right now is. So yeah.
I can go next, if you guys are okay with that. So I started out way back in high school making neat games using the Game Maker software, and that kind of got me into programming from there. And then from there, I went into HTML, CSS, using Code Academy courses, making basic websites and things like that. Eventually starting at OTC for a computer science degree, and about a few years into that, I was able to get a internship at Skyfactor Ventures, which is a subsidiary of Macmillan Learning. And then from there, after spending a few years there, going from intern to application software engineer, I eventually went over back to school to wrap up my bachelor's degree at WGU. And once I wrapped up there, I went at a short period of time at Netsmart, and then from Netsmart, I went on to my current job at Beach Platform. So that's a summary of my career.
So as I said, I went to OTC, got my associate's degree. While going to school there, I created a website for a small electronics company that I worked for at the time. Immediately, I took a job with McKesson here in Springfield. Started out with fixing bugs in VB applications, having never seen VB6 in my life. Progressed there to creating tools, and then into uplifting some of the VB6 stuff into .NET web application. Subsequently, the company was bought by Change Healthcare, and then again by Netsmart. How we ended up there. So I essentially still work with the same people that I started with in 2008, but under a different company name now. Currently in a DevOps role, internal DevOps stuff. Constant technologies every week, it seems. So.
I'll go ahead and start this one off, I guess. I actually found out that I actually tend to be a slower learner. I tend to do, takes time for me to learn a lot of concepts. Once I've done it a few times, and I've got it down really well. But one of the things that was always a struggle for me is feeling that I was in a slump a lot. But also, I think part of that tends to be the most common times I felt like I was in a slump. There's a lot of things else going on in my life at the time. So I guess the times I do feel in a slump, I analyze what else is going on in my life that causes me not to learn. But not grasping new concepts, that's a common thing that I have to constantly work on myself. So.
Good. Anybody else?
I got a few. You go first.
All right, sorry. Yeah, so when I find myself struggling with some of that stuff, I do, honestly, what I tend to do with a lot of things is take a step back and try to break it down into smaller pieces. And once I can master one part of it, build on after that. It also helps to try to relate I'm familiar with, if possible. Because then that just makes it, it might be a little bit different, but it helps me know I've got a general idea of how this should work. How is it different? And then analyze that. So, but definitely taking a step back usually helps.
Chris, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I kind of want to build up on taking a step back. One of the things I usually do is kind of like look for another way of looking at it. 9 times then I found there is someone on YouTube who has a crystal clear explanation of the concept that you're looking for, or at the ground that you're looking for. So I would recommend that, kind of looking for other ways of looking at the concept of the problem.
I have a pitch for, and I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. The red here. Fred, because you're part of the OG Springfield, right? Or open source, sorry, open source Springfield, the projects that Levi was talking about, OpenSGF, yeah. Because that's, when I find myself in a slump, I do things like that. So I go looking for projects or things that are different from that, but can relate to what I'm doing, like they were talking about. Look at things from a different perspective. So I don't like being in a slump, and that it does happen frequently, I think, to pretty much everybody. So when I start, as soon as I start to feel the slightest bit of like, man, I'm banging my head against the wall, or I need, I'm not understanding this principle, whatever it is that I'm reading about. You were talking about like YouTube. That's another great. There are a million people out there who've done it, but I also try and make practical applications, even if it's not exactly to what. I really like working on other projects with other people, so I find a project that's interesting for me, and there's lots of groups that meet on a regular basis that you can become part of and help contribute. So
Good, thank you. I noticed nobody mentioned anything about a rubber duck.
In my defense, the ones that you gave me, I forgot at one of my offices. Apologies, Kristen.
I have a collection of
I don't know what you're talking about.
Switch NFC characters that I talk to, but very similar.
All right, good. So I'll make sure we get a pitch for the ducks. All right, good. Thank you, panelists. All right, next question. In your educational approach to your career, what do you regret not doing?
So I did a lot of but now that I've seen some of the classes you can take at OTC and the material that's there, I would say some can be also detrimental, or I don't know if detrimental is the right word, but there's a lot of rules and a lot of things that you can learn that make developing software a lot easier than just going out to whatever website and code and pasting it in and hitting run. There's a lot of fundamental type things that I wish I had the opportunity to see earlier in my career rather than later in my career.
I want to echo that because when I first learned website development, I literally went to a library, grabbed a book on HTML4, and started just hammering out from there. And again, a lot of copy paste from other websites of things that looked cool and reverse engineering things to make them work on my employer's website or my own personal website. But there's a lot of content out there that's really well organized, both in an education setting of educational institutions like a college, or I personally like several online. That's my go-to for learning, something that's well organized that lets you know what the next step is. Because there's several times in where I wasn't sure what the next step was. What would be the next thing I need to learn? Oh, I need to learn PHP. Well, how do I learn PHP? Or this piece of software. Well, how do I learn that? I feel like today there's a lot more videos online that do tend to have that flow, but finding that can be daunting as well. So
I would add to that, one thing that I really regret is not just learning from my mistakes, but from kind of everyone's mistakes. You could go online and find a lot of articles about kind of common software engineering problems, depending on the technology you're using, like common TypeScript problems or things like that. And looking back on my career, that's like the one common theme is all these times where now that I look back, I see that I was reinventing the wheel when I didn't have to. So really emphasizing that, as much as we want to think like, okay, I've been in the field for a while, I now know this, always checking yourself and doing a bit more research to make sure that there isn't a better way to do it.
Yeah, I don't know necessarily about regret, but I definitely wish I had learned more data access stuff early on. At the time when I went to college, there was one class, and it was really basic introduction to SQL at the time. And moving into working for a corporation where everything is driven on data, I was a little lacking at that point. Now, I kind of wished I had more, or took it upon myself to learn more from the database standpoint.
Nice. Good. All right, good answers. Thank you. All right, kind of a side twist here. What would you have done if you didn't go into tech? What were the options in your world that swayed your attention?
I probably would have either remained working at the small electronics shop that I worked at, or working for my dad building boat seats.
You sound so excited
Boat
about
seats.
that.
Yeah.
I honestly don't have any clue.
Would probably have gone into one of the scientific fields. I've always been fascinated with science, every aspect of it, whether that be neurology or astronomy or biology, but I'd probably end up in either biology or chemistry. One of the ones that has been astronomy.
Anthony, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so I really don't think I would have done anything else. I was in here trying to think of anything else that I would have tried, but I think I would have gravitated back then to, just every time. I like playing computer games. I still do, and that just drew me into the technology. Every new piece of technology that's come out has been neat and exciting to me. So I don't know how I would have done anything else.
I almost went into civil engineering. I was good at math and physics, and so I thought, hey, let's go with this. Civil engineers make pretty good money. And then once I actually started taking the physics class, I hate this. And so then I was like, well, how much does website programmer make? Oh, it's all right. And then I saw like, oh, how much does a programmer make? Okay, yeah, I can do that. So let's go with that. Other than that, actually, I might have the other career that I might have done is music, so, which is not science related at all, but still very passionate.
I happen to know this one amazing at music, so don't let her downplay her. I might have done music. She's amazing. So probably embarrass her, and I'm not sorry. She's very good. Really not very sorry. All right. So the next question you guys kind of answered already as far as, I'll just read it. Have any of you changed fields into tech? If so, recommend, or I'll rephrase it and say, what would you recommend to somebody who's interested in changing whatever they're doing now and becoming involved in tech? Do you have any recommendations for them? So you can tell 85 pounds of me, I can fight fires. What would you recommend if I wanted to switch fields? If I wanted to get into tech, do you have any recommendations for me?
Well, I didn't change fields into tech, but one of the mistakes I realized I made with kind of going to school is I pushed all of my software engineering related classes to the end in the hope that doing that there would be less likelihood I would forget anything going from there into my career. And in hindsight, I should have actually done them first, because when you do them first and when you start to build up that experience, you could get an internship while you're in college. And then from there, you could either up your degree or you could probably go right into software engineering without finishing up your degree. So if you're looking to quickly change careers, that's the path that I would recommend, especially in places like Springfield, which have a more emphasis on degrees, whereas some other cities might not.
I would say make sure that you will feel comfortable sitting behind a desk for 8 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds goofy, but my brother went into engineering and did it for about a year and decided he hated it and went back to working with his hands. He said he just couldn't stand sitting behind a desk. Myself, that doesn't bother me. So.
Good input. Thank you. You guys want to add anything?
Yeah, I would say I would make a pitch for OTC. I think getting education is good, and then I also would say work on projects, because experience, the other thing that's really hard to replicate is experience. So if you can show people the portfolio of applications you've worked on, that's just as good in a lot of cases as a 4-year degree. So, but you really need both, and I would recommend, in town, I would recommend OTC for sure. And then, like I said, these projects that you can get part of, work on those projects and spend your extra time doing it. Well, anything is good. Preferably the languages that you want to go after, like if you're going to go work for somebody, if you think you really like the Microsoft stack, then there's Microsoft groups in town. There's the open one that we talked about. They work on not-for-profit organizations, and so they have projects that are there every Tuesday. So there's a lot you can do besides just your own website. You can come to these kind of meetings and find people that are working on all kinds of projects. I think Mike was talking about in Discord. They came up with the idea of people's favorite language, and then they were putting it on a map, and so then they were talking about putting that on the website. I mean, it's that kind of thing that all of a sudden somebody's idea, a project, and then you have experience doing that kind of tech. So.
One of the things that I haven't been in tech from straight out of high school, so I didn't have languages, but one thing that I've seen multiple times is going back to school. OTC is definitely great with the classes. But also, I'm going to echo the teamtreehouse.com. I don't advertise for them, but they were amazing. In fact, they were actually on par with every single class I've taken at OTC. I would always log in and do it on Team Treehouse first to prepare for the semester. And then I found out that I literally learned the exact same things as I learned in. So let me ask better questions of my instructor and maybe more advanced questions that I could talk to them about, make some things make more sense than just learning. So if you're not from around here and you want to go start somewhere, teamtreehouse.com. They're not too expensive, and if you know somebody who has an account, you can get them you can get them $5 off. So, but no, but for real, like I actually have several coworkers that went Team Treehouse, and I actually have a friend who's for development, and he started with Team Treehouse and spent hours in that. Came from he was a chef, so.
I'm going to ask the next question. I want to remind folks that maybe came in, we're going to ask questions. We ask you to do it through Slido, and I'll walk around a QR code. That way folks at home can hear your questions because it's through me. So some of you came in late and didn't get that announcement. So I'm going to ask the next question, then I'll walk around with my QR code so folks at home can hear your brilliantly worded questions. We don't want them to miss out on that. All right, so I'll ask the next question, and that would be, in what ways did you start reaching out into the community during or after college? I wasn't going to answer the question. I was hoping you would. You were actingly. It's not on the QR code. I'm giving that to them. Nylah, take it. No pressure.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Well, reach out into the community. I'm very networking driven, so I love building network no matter where I'm at. I teach piano lessons a lot, so I already have a lot of people talk to me about different things. Very passionate about whatever I do. And so I guess really networking, finding groups to be a part of. For me, it was, I started with my local church. They needed a website. I needed experience, and it was the most unsecure website in the world. We got hacked once, but hey, we learned from it. And but I know, I know several people would love to have some type of project. Like for instance, right now I'm working on a project for my sister. So just something. I'm sure a family member has a problem that you can at least attempt to solve, and then start networking from there. So.
Actually, I helped out helping out the SGF devs. So I kind of volunteered for the communication committee and then eventually the events committee, helping keep the emails going and keep the updates going and keep event organization or assist with event organization. Chapter 4 takes care of like 90% of that.
I think Kirsten should answer the question because I know at least one time when she reached out in the community, helped us with the coder, I don't remember, coder dojos, which are little, or things to try and get the kids interested in coding at a young age, and SGF devs, and I don't know, a couple hours a week trying to find a way to give back to the community that I feel like fostered my career. Most of it wasn't in Springfield, but that's where I am, so that's where I try and give back. And so there are so many opportunities to help people. Even if you think about it, even helping somebody with their computer, helping your grandma with her computer, that can be a rewarding experience in helping the community become more tech savvy and more tech friendly. But especially reaching out, and talking to other people and finding common ground is a really good way to reach out and get better entrenched in the community.
Most of my networking has taken place just through relationships with coworkers, and they move on to other companies, and I remain friends with them, friends of theirs from their new companies, things like that. Also, remaining close with some instructors and other students from when I went to school. I've done the Hack for Good hackathons here with you, I believe, and Tiffany and Mike. Not I believe. But yeah, just things like that. And honestly, that hackathon was one of the funnest things I've done. Like it was fun. So.
All right, good, thank you. This is a question I think every experience level of programmers feel at some point, unless you prove me otherwise. Have you ever struggled with imposter syndrome? How did you overcome it?
Do you overcome imposter syndrome?
Good
No.
answer. Yes. Is-
But you can go first.
I was just going to say, the challenge to imposter syndrome, in my opinion, is that you want to always be learning, and it's going to feel like, at times when you're challenging yourself, it's going to feel like you're way out of your league, and people you're going to think you are better than you are at coding, and they think you're going to think higher of you than you are, but the reality is to focus. At least for me, the reality is to focus on the problems that you solve, and not necessarily on how you're solving it or how good you are solving it, but focus on, all I'm doing is trying to solve this problem, and I'll solve this one and move to the next one, and you can solve it, and I don't know. That's how I deal with it, I think. But
I was going to say something, but then he said all of it.
So ditto from Chris. Gotcha.
I think it also helps to take a look at your previous accomplishments and realize that, well, maybe you are as good as you don't think you are, if that makes sense. And if that doesn't work, just keep faking it till you make it.
I would say use it as an excuse to do better or study more. Think of it as something that's constantly driving you to learn more, and then it becomes more of a benefit instead of a constant irritation.
I think part of imposter syndrome comes from also knowing that those around you do know a lot in similar fields as you, do know more than you. So that does give you opportunity to reach out to those and ask them, hey, what did you do? So I know for me, I've definitely felt it several times where I was very inadequate at what I was doing, but then I was able to reach out to a coworker or another senior programmer that I just ask, hey, what are your steps? I'm stuck here. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable in the position you're in to open up to another person, and because we've all been there and we all have that shared experience. So.
Nice. Anthony, I have a question for you directly. What's the hardest part of managing people? How did you prepare and transition to a management role?
so I think people who are really good at talking to people in technology gravitate up to management, whether they want to or not. And so making the soft skills to talk to other people, to listen a lot more. And when I say listen, I just open your ears and hear, but actually listen to what people are saying and understand what they're trying to say, becomes critical. That's also the hardest part of managing people, is that you're not, at least for me, I don't like to be a boss. That word is evil in my mind. And so you're trying to listen to what your people are telling you while you're still trying to get work done. you know, because other people, you're always, as far as I can, even all the way up to the top, you're going to be taking directions or orders or whatever you want to say from somebody else. But and then you have to execute on those things. So that's what being a manager really is about, is taking a team of people and executing on somebody else's order or vision or whatever you want to call it. And one of the cool things about managing people is when they succeed, and then the not so cool part is when they don't succeed, when you're not in sync. So I've had people from that are from every range. I've managed now for quite a while, and I've had people that I loved working with and that were really good at I didn't have to manage them very closely. They would report back. I didn't have to. They would get their work done on time. And then I've had people horrendous, can't get their work done on time, never report back, don't, they'll be stuck on. It was funny, she was talking about asking people for help. That's probably the Achilles heel of most of the developers I've worked with, is that they want to solve the problem so bad that they can't sometimes see that. And I think Chris said this too about, he trying to reinvent the wheel and it's like, hey, if you'd asked me about that 5 minutes ago, I'd have told you, exactly what steps you needed to take to solve that problem. So managing is an interesting experience. I will say I don't like it. So a lot of people that I know want to be managers, but I'm pretty sure that once they become a manager, they will change their mind. But I'm going back into a technical role of an enterprise architect because I just don't like managing people. It's a lot, because it is not technical work. It's just people work.
Does anybody else want to touch on that? No, they weren't asked directly. And the crowd went quiet. Okie dokie. All right, good. Thank you, Anthony. All right, trying to get different types of questions here. So here's another one. In your career path, how are companies advocating, supporting women, LGBT people, people of color, or minority groups in tech? Does anybody have any experience that to share or?
So we have a diversity program at our company that's for the whole company. And I'll tell you, as a hiring manager, it is very, very frustrating. Hundreds of resumes, and probably less than 5% are either women, LGBT, or people of color, any minority group. I mean, so I would encourage everybody in this room to do is make sure your little sisters know that coding is cool and that there is no reason that they shouldn't have a career as a developer. I kept looking and I've hired now 3 females, women in my team, and hire those 3 and 100 more like them. So far, diversity is especially important in my opinion, because they bring something to the table that is different. That's the whole point. And so when you're trying to solve problems in a way, it's an art form. I don't know, I can get on a soapbox, but developing is like an art form. And a lot of people think it's a science, and it is. There are definitely scientific aspects to it, but it's an art form to take something that doesn't exist and create it. And then it's a whole nother engineering process to refine it, right? So some engineers or developers find themselves very, very good at refining other people's code. And that's a good skill set to have. It's another to just develop something out of scratch. And so we can introduce more diversity into the tech field, especially around creativity and development type resources. You're going to get better applications. You're going to get better technology than you are just hands down than if everybody's from the same and cut from the same cloth and they think the same way. So
I'm really glad where I'm Jack Henry. as far as women in technology is, on my team, there's at one point, there's 1/3 of were women. Surprising to me when I first joined the team, just because, it's a very male-dominated field. But even in Jack Henry, they've actually done some recent business innovation groups, and so that first started with women at JHA, and then several other groups came out from that as well. One of the big ones that I'm part of is the LGBTQ group, and we actually, several of us were like, what about us? We reached out to the CEO, and there are several people that really facilitated that, and so we ended up getting a business innovation group that I'm now a part of right now. Actually, want to go back to the question, make sure I understood. Well, oh well, there's so many questions. Can you repeat the question real quick? I want to make sure I'm on topic too.
Yeah, I wanted to say it the way it was worded. I think the concern was, and several other questions asked the same thing. Just how are companies, or how are your experience? Have you encountered any of those kinds of challenges, or seen anybody in your workplace that has encountered any kind of challenges, and how is that handled in the world you work in?
Jack Henry being a stock market, so a lot of corporate companies are moving forward that direction as far as really pushing for minority groups to have resources and to be a more diverse workplace. So that is one benefit of working in a more of a corporate job. But then, but if you're not, or if your company doesn't have one, one of the main things is try to bring it up with your management, because that is something that we're seeing in technology as more and more women enter the field, and as more and more people of color, people in the LGBT community as well. That's a lot of talent that can be missed.
Thank you.
I have one additional thing to add to this. If you do live in a very not diverse town, I don't want to call out Springfield, but it isn't as diverse as other places, I would recommend trying to kind of move in the direction of a remote job, because you will find a lot more diversity at a remote job than you would maybe in a local business in your town.
Good, thank
And I
you.
know I've talked to other people, and they said it's uncomfortable to be on a team if you're either the only African American on the team or the only woman on the team, and it affects your life.
More thing. So I was actually the first out person at a local company here in Springfield that I know of, and actually started with me talking to the CEO, letting him know, like, hey, here's what's going on in my life. Luckily, we had great managers there and a great leadership team that actually cared about their people. And so, and actually, for the most part, it was a very smooth transition, learning how to work with other coworkers and addressing different things. And so it's a lot of courage to talk to your managers about it, but I would really encourage you to develop that relationship with your managers so that you can't then if you're in a place where you can't talk to your management about personal things, I mean, as far as what's going on in your life, then if you don't feel comfortable there, then maybe that's not the place for you to be working at.
Good. Thank you. All right. I think I'm going to end this with this last question because we're getting close to 7:30, but I think this will bring up some conversation. When using code from rather than recreating it, how do you go about ensuring that you understand the code being used and its various applications? There's that challenge with Stack Overflow, right? Copy and paste versus creating it from scratch, not recreating the wheel. Where's all that balance there? Oh, wait, quiet.
I usually try to keep those pieces of code that I copy from somewhere else relatively small, so that it is easier to understand that small chunk of code. Also, I tend to a test application, run through it, debug through it, see what it's doing, make sure I do understand it before implementing it. Because if you implement it, you don't understand it, and it breaks, they're going to look for you to fix it. And if you don't know how to fix it because you don't know how it works, you just painted yourself into a corner. So.
I would recommend, instead of copying it, kind of transcribing it. So writing it over from the beginning, because as you're doing that, you'll start to notice points where you could optimize it, issues that aren't going to fit in with what you're trying to accomplish and stuff like that.
A lot of that's experience, I guess. I remember in high school, totally copying code from a website. Saw a slideshow, liked it, moved it to my own website, and everything broke. And then slowly figuring out the little pieces fix it. But then starting there, it was a great thing. There, you learn how to copy the code correctly, and then also you learn how to read the code better. You know, I totally remember taking apart a website to see how things worked before I copied that whatever I was trying to copy onto the other website. So I will echo what you just said with trying to read it and understand it, and then also the test environment. I totally get that. You know, make a little test environment, see if it works. So.
I think a good teacher, and probably, I don't know about you guys, but it's like 50-50 whether it'll run or not if you copy and paste. And so it can be a challenge to find code that runs the first time if you don't. And so if you don't understand it, it's really hard to troubleshoot. But I would say you got to be careful even with third-party code, and that's where you can see some of the companies that have been bit the hardest. You know, with security vulnerabilities and things like that, were because they were using third-party plugins that they didn't either know and what the plugins were doing. And so I think that's a pretty big industry problem right now, and I think it's interesting that it came up here because it is like I think it's a big industry problem. There's some scanners. I can't remember the open source one off the top of my head, but we use a product called Sneak, but it's a security scanner, and they have a open platform database. They go out and they look for recorded vulnerabilities, and they look at versions, and they've got a big database. So then you can run your code against it, and it'll look for dependencies, and it'll follow the dependency tree and write out this pretty dependency tree, and it'll usually flag items that are out of control. So that's another good way to do it, but it's definitely a problem.
Thank you. A lot of different conversations going on here. I appreciate you guys being vulnerable and being here. Parting advice or parting words for things that you've heard, questions you've heard, things that came into your mind at the last minute, encouraging words. There are some OTC students here that might feel a little overwhelmed. I happen to know. Any encouraging words for anybody?
Yeah, I'd say this is the funnest job on the planet. Everybody says that about their job, but maybe not. But I love my job. I love technology, and I think if you're in it, you're gonna find it's a lot of fun every day. You're solving problems in a way that other people can't. And I saw a question about mentors, and I'll tell you that's probably the best thing you can do for your career is find a mentor. And if you're having trouble, if you're an OTC student, I'd say talk to Dr. Ford or one of your teachers, and they'll help you hook up with mentors. There are people in the community that are and willing to take on new, younger developers under their wing, and that's a really good step for your career is just to get a good mentor. So.
Good advice.
I would add to that, not just as feel fun, but it's amazing in a sense in what you'll be able to build down the road. So in just a few years, actually today, well, in a few years for the graduates, you'll be able to stick together a few Python packages and build your own translator, or you'll be able to use a machine learning library and have something with hand detection or something with facial detection. So really be excited about the field, because there's a lot of cool things when you dig into it, and they could look daunting at first, but there's always someone out there making it easier to work with.
Try different things. If you're not sure if you like, don't stick to one language. Try other languages. For me, I found out it's actually not about the language. It's about the type of development I do. I don't like application development. I work in support, so I read a lot of code. I do code fixes, but I love someone having a problem that day, and I resolve their problem for them as soon as possible. And I get a lot of that helps me. I get a lot from that I never got from application development. So for me, it's not really about the languages. I went from P to RPGLE, back 30 years ago, feels like. But I love what I do is because I get the satisfaction of helping customers. And so try different things before you decide that it's not for you, because you might find that there's something out there that actually does fit what kind of worker you are.
I would say for students, if you're struggling, ask questions. Ask your instructor. If you're having trouble with a specific topic, talk to your instructor. I taught at OTC for a couple of years as an adjunct, and one of the major things I saw was students who asked questions typically did better in the class. Those that didn't ask any questions wouldn't do as well. So, I mean, if you don't feel like you know enough, ask questions.
I think something you all neglect to say is, as we know all of these languages, we can watch things like CSI, and the geek that's figuring out all the problems, and you look and see it's just HTML, you're like, wait a minute, right? That's an important part of this job too, is being able to recognize the stuff on TV. So.
Or see two people type on the same keyboard.
Right, right. I think that's important, and we feel like we're really smart when we can point that out. Go ahead.
You also realize that all of that stuff is totally fake on TV.
What? What?
In some cases, there are a few TV shows and series that actually get it right. Very few.
Sure.
Okay, so let's move past that one. It takes a lot to come out here and put yourself in front of everybody and answer these questions. Vulnerability and some courage, and I really appreciate all four of you sharing that with us, because I know it's not easy, but I think we all got a lot out of it. I know the folks at home, and I see a lot of heads nodding, so thank you very much for being here and sharing you and your experiences with us. It means a lot to people that are struggling or thinking about this field or what have you. So thank you for being here, all four of you, for showing up. I know it's not easy. So there's still some questions that we didn't answer. We will post those unanswered questions from the queue in Discord, and so people can discuss and or answer them there. So we'll make sure we add whatever questions were still remaining. There were still quite a few before we closed the queue. I want to remind you to think about coming to our next meetup at OTC. Yay, OTC. We had a lot of plugs for OTC today. So yay, we have a lot of people representing OTC today, so thank you for that. A lot of panels from OTC, so thank you for that. So hopefully we'll see you all at the esports. You have got to see this place. I'm going to put in a plug for Dr. Ford. She's the one that built that program. It's an amazing program, and what she's built there is just unbelievable. So she's kind of modest about it, but please come out and see what we're doing over there. We really enjoy working with the community. We enjoy from OTC connecting with you all in the community. Sometimes our students feel a little intimidated to come to these meetups, so we appreciate you accepting them and making them feel welcome. So thank you for that. I'm speaking on their behalf, even though they didn't tell me to. And thank you for coming. So I appreciate you being here. There's still pizza left over, so make sure you get some pizza before you go. And that's the ball game. It's a wrap. So thank you.